one of the things that we're going to start off with in this function exercise is that we're going to look at where the files are being pulled and how they're being pulled. So let's get started by first going to my htdocs folder, and I'm going to go to my dev folder. And then I have this folder that I've created called displayImages function. Okay, I'm going to open that up here. And what we've got, and you could create something in a similar fashion, so create a folder called displayImages function or whatever you want to call it. And then inside of it, I'm going to have a folder called galleries. Now, the way that this is going to work is that, and I want you to sort of like walk through the reasoning with this with me. If you wanted to have multiple galleries instead of just one gallery, let's say you're doing a portfolio, for instance, and you have a portfolio of stuff, maybe from illustration, web design, I don't know. Let's say you wanted to keep those galleries separate. Well, you could have something like a main galleries folder, and then you could have your separate individual galleries. In this case, it's something that's very similar to some discussions that we're doing for a class where you're talking about content management systems in one discussion and responsive design in another, and server-side scripting in another one. And so this would give you a way, if you desired to, have 3 separate galleries, maybe for background images or whatever, depending on your design, where you wanted to have pages about those topics, then you could have your 3 different galleries. But this could extend to anything. Like I said, if you're doing a portfolio where you've got different types of galleries like illustration, print design, web design, whatever. You could also have multiple albums as well. So for instance, let's say that you wanted to have something that was maybe portfolio. Well, instead of this being called galleries, it could be called portfolio, and then everything that goes inside I know is actually a portfolio. Whereas maybe I could have a second album, let's call it backgrounds or something like that. And if we know that we're only going to be pulling background images, from this folder, we could have multiple galleries inside of backgrounds. I'm going to get rid of that for right now, but just so you understand, you can have multiple galleries, multiple albums, and multiple galleries within those albums. So, but this is the architecture that we're going to work with right now. And so you'll notice that the root level of this function folder is, I'm calling it displayImages-function. That's the root of my exercise folder that I'm working with. Okay, and then directly inside of that is the folder galleries, and inside of that I've got 3 additional galleries. Okay, so I've got content management, responsive design, scripting. You'll notice that these don't have spaces, they have underscores. Now the other thing is that you'll look inside of those, and each one of these has a parallel structure. Each one has large, medium, and small folders. This is pretty normal for normal content management systems, so we're going to go ahead and generate something that's very similar. And you would always want to start out with your largest pictures first, so that if you don't know exactly how you're going to be using these pictures, like you don't know if it's going to be for a giant background image or going to be for little thumbnails, then you need to automatically start with really high quality images. So these, if you were to look at a little bit more information about them, then what you would find, let's just take a look, is that these large ones, you can see that the resolution, the dimensions are about 2560 on that one. Down here it's 1946. So they're pretty big. They need to be big enough that they could span somebody's large screen on a desktop resolution. Okay, so that they don't lose too much quality. Now, if you wanted to do something where you overlaid like a pattern, to sort of hide the poor quality, you could do that. Just know also that these large pictures, they are going to really affect your load time. So just be aware of that and keep that in mind whenever you're loading other images on the page. The medium ones, they're the exact same images. Notice they have the exact same names. But they're the exact same images, and the sizes are a little bit smaller. In this example, I made the maximum 1100. You could make them even smaller if you wanted to make them maybe a max of 800, 900, something like that. That's fine. It's up to you. So that let's say that somebody's using a lightbox and you wanted to be able to click a thumbnail and have a bigger picture open. This would be the medium size that you might have them open up. And then of course small, that's going to be like for your thumbnails. All right, and so I've chosen this as 200 by 200. You know, that way it gives me the opportunity to have larger thumbnails instead of just really small ones. Okay, so the point is that every single one of these galleries ultimately is going to have large, medium, and small. Okay, and you can see here that that's a parallel structure. Okay, all right, so but whenever we first start off though, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going and starting off with the large one. Okay, so the first thing that we should probably do is figure out how you can get these thumbnails. You know, how do you make these thumbnails? Because that's something that takes a lot of time in production. Well, I can show you a really quick and dirty way of making these things. So just for the sake of my demonstration, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, let's go back up a directory yet again, is I'm going to just take my whole galleries folder for right now, and I'm going to make a copy on my desktop so that I have a backup. You're not going to be doing this, right? You're not going to have this backup, but I'm going to do that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of a couple of galleries just to simplify this. And then I'm also going to get rid of the medium and small, okay? So let's move that to the trash. And let's just say that we've got this now, all right? This is where, let's say, if you're going to go and collect your images, you're going to go collect a bunch of nice big images, and you want to make sure that the image resolution is not higher than 72. If it is, you're going to need to modify that. But you'll also notice that in this example, I have a bunch of other stuff, like I have something called empty folder, I have a PDF, I also have something that's a test file that doesn't have any kind of extension on it. All right, so you'll see here that I've actually got something else going on. This is going to be so that we can test later to make sure that nothing gets messed up if somebody accidentally did put a bunch of non-images inside of your image folder. Because what would happen if you tried to, you know, load a PDF or something maybe that wasn't actually a picture file into your gallery? All right, well, we'll get to that later, but for now, this would actually create some problems for us to have these non-image files inside of here. So what I'm going to do temporarily is I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm just going to call this test files. Okay, and then I'll move them back later. But otherwise, what's going to happen is when I start to do stuff with Photoshop, it's going to give me a problem where it wants to throw an error in my batch creation, because I'm going to show you how you can batch this stuff. Okay. Now, the other thing too is that, just so you know, this is not really a GIF file. I'm going to move it in here too. Okay, that's also a test file. So what we really have is we have 5 files. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open Photoshop. Okay, now that Photoshop's open, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open one of those files, and I'm going to go to Gallery. So I'm in my Display Images function, Galleries, Responsive Design, Large. I'm just going to open one of these up for right now. Okay. All right, now what I want to do is I want to create what's called an action, where I develop an action that I can then apply to all of my other files. So first of all, let's go up here, and if you have this showing, you've got this little play button, those are actions. If not, then you can go up to Window, and then you can choose Actions. Okay, now you've got a bunch of default actions here. What we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder, a new set of actions, and I'm just going to call it my name, so you can call it whatever you want. And before I actually go and create my new action, which is this little page icon down here, the thing I need to think about is what am I going to do? All right, well, I'm going to be making a smaller version of all of these. So we're going to go from our large pictures down to our medium-sized pictures. And I should also tell you that, you know, you should open all of your pictures up that you download from the internet, if that's what you're doing, or if you've got pictures from one of your cameras or something. You need to make sure that all of the image sizes for these large pictures are going to be 72 ppi. If they're larger than that, then you're going to end up having a problem unless you're going to do retina display, but I'm not going to get into that here. So you need to make sure that they're 72 and not higher, because if they're higher than that, then they're going to be way, way, way too big. Okay. So anyway, what we're going to do is be creating the medium ones. Well, we need to think about, you know, where are we going to save them? Well, let's look at our file system again. So if we look at our file system, what we've got now is we have this responsive design, and then we have large. I'm going to propose something because later when we go to create, not just medium, but we're going to create the small version too. Let's actually go inside of here and let's create our medium real quickly. We'll create our medium empty folder, and then let's make our small empty folder as well. I want to go back now. So now I've got large, medium, and small folders made, but we're going to do something where inside of galleries, we make something, we'll call it, and I'm going to put an underscore so it jumps to the top of the list. We'll call it repository images or folder or something like that. Okay, and then what's going to happen is when we go to batch save stuff, we're going to save them into here and then just move them. And then that way later, whenever we save different sizes and tell it to go to a different folder, we can just always have it save right to the same spot. And I'll show you kind of how that's helpful. All right, so let's go back here. So we're going to go create an action now by clicking on this little page icon. And I'm just going to call it 1100 W for wide, save it in the set that I made, and hit record. Now, you see this record button is on. Everything that I do from this point, even if I choose to undo it, is going to get recorded, and it's going to happen. Okay, so what I can do now is I go up to, I'm just going to save it for the web. So if I go File, I can now go Save for Web. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to look at the final image size here. And I want to change it so that it's a maximum of 1100 pixels wide. And what that's going to do is it's going to dramatically affect how large the actual file is. And so you can look at the quality and sort of decide, what you're comfortable with. And, what you really need to pay attention to is the trade-off in the load time. So you might want to find the image that matters the most to you of the entire batch and use that as the basis of setting up your batch imaging, because then you can choose the quality based on the most important image. But just be aware that the more visual information there is, sort of the higher the file sizes are going to end up being. So I'm just going to stick with something like I could probably get away with 20%. It looks like it's really not that different. You might not be comfortable with that. You might want to go with a higher quality. Just let's take a peek at what would happen if we went to say even 30. You could also go to 50 and so forth, and you might make a decision that your minimum is 50, and that's what's really important to you. But I still think that 378K is a little bit big for load time, so I might just choose like the 30% quality. Anyway, so I'm going to end up going over here and hitting save, and it's going to ask me where to save it. I'm going to choose to put it in my repository, okay? And remember, this is what's going to end up being a batch later, so everything's going to go into that repository. So I hit save. You see that it saves out as an export up here. It's still recording. I don't want to stop it yet. What I want to do is I want to close the original file, and I do not, okay, I'm going to repeat, do not save the original, okay? And then now I can stop my action, and we've got this action. And if I want now, I can just go and select my action. I can go up to File, can say automate batch, and now what I want to do is I want to make sure I'm pulling from the set that I created, choose the correct action. We're going to choose the source as a folder, and we're going to choose the folder source, and remember the folder source that we're going to choose is the large group of images. Okay, so it's going to be responsive design in my case, then large. All right, so that's the source files. And then part of the action already told it to save it in the repository, so I'm not going to worry about the destination. I'm just going to leave that at none. And I'm going to hit OK. And then it's just automatically going to do this for me. Okay? And then it's just going to take a few seconds. Now if I go back to my Finder, you see I've got now all these repository images saved. And you can see the file size out here. They're a lot smaller, so that's good. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to take all of these and I'm going to actually just move them into my medium folder. Okay, and so that's pretty much that for the medium size. In the next one, I'll show you a slightly different strategy for the small ones.